They laughed at her. In front of everyone, at her brother's birthday party. She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't loud. She was just there. Helping. Serving. Forgotten. But what no one knew was that a letter, hidden, sealed, and protected, would be read that night. And with it, everything would turn upside down. Because the girl they ignored? She owned the house they were standing in. Stay with us until the end. This isn't just a story about inheritance. It's about being seen. If you've ever felt invisible, this story is for you. Tap like and subscribe now, because stories like this one deserve to be shared. It was the morning of my little brother's 18th birthday, and the entire house buzzed like a beehive. My mother rushed around with a clipboard, barking orders at the caterers. My aunts were already placing satin ribbons on chairs in the backyard. Everything had to be perfect. He was, after all, the future of the family, as they like to say. I stood at the kitchen sink, washing the last of the fruit trays. No one had asked me to help, I just always did. My name's Elise, and I'm the older sister. Not that anyone ever remembered that. I was the one who stayed behind when Dad got sick. The one who worked part-time at the diner and still managed to help with his meds. But today, I was just the girl in the background. As I carried a tray outside, my cousin Jamie passed by and chuckled. Didn't know we had hired help today, she said under her breath, loud enough for her friends to hear. They laughed. I bit the inside of my cheek and smiled. It was easier that way. My brother, Tyler, stepped out of the house in his brand new designer shirt. Mom had probably bought it just for today. Don't forget to light the sparklers at exactly 7:30, he said, not even looking at me. I nodded. Got it. He didn't say thanks. The sun was already high when the first guests arrived. Old friends from school, neighbors, even his girlfriend's parents. Everyone hugged him, congratulated him. Not a single person noticed the girl who had strung up the fairy lights the night before, who'd burned her fingers gluing the decorations. At one point, someone asked, "Hey, Elise, are you still doing that waitress thing?" I smiled politely. Yeah, for now. They nodded with that half-sympathetic look, like I was a volunteer in my own failure. I wanted to disappear. As the sun began to set and the sky turned golden, I stood by the edge of the lawn, watching people clink glasses and laugh. No one had talked to me for over an hour. And yet, I stayed. Because somehow, even when you're invisible, you hope someone will see you. But no one did. At least not yet. The music got louder as the evening rolled in, and by the time the cake was wheeled out, the backyard looked like something from a movie. Strands of lights glowed above us like tiny stars, and everyone gathered around Tyler, singing as if he were royalty. I stood near the back, half clapping, trying to smile. When the candles were blown out, people started taking turns with speeches. Mom gave one, of course, talked about how proud she was of her young man and how she just knew he'd make the family name shine. Aunt Denise followed, bragging about how Tyler was the first in the family to get accepted into college with a sports scholarship. Then came the jokes. I remember when Elise used to boss him around like a little soldier. Uncle Barry laughed, raising his glass. Now look who's the star of the show. Everyone laughed. Even Tyler. I forced a small laugh too, though my chest felt tight. Then someone added, "You still live here, don't you, Elise?" Guess the older sibling doesn't always lead the way, huh? That one stung. I looked down at my shoes, my cheeks burning. Tyler turned and smirked. She's cool with it. Right, sis? I wanted to vanish. But I nodded. Yeah. Of course. The rest of the evening passed like a blur. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. No one noticed when I walked away from the party and sat on the porch steps, alone. I looked out at the backyard, at the people who shared my blood but barely knew me. I could hear them still laughing behind me. Maybe at a joke. Maybe at me. Then a black car pulled up. Sleek. Unexpected. A man stepped out, dressed in a tailored suit and holding a briefcase. He looked around as if unsure whether he had the right address. Then he asked one of the servers something. The server pointed to the backyard. The man adjusted his tie and walked slowly toward the party. I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. I stood up instinctively as the man made his way toward the crowd, weaving through the laughter and string lights with quiet confidence. He didn't look like someone there to deliver balloons or give a toast. There was a seriousness to him, like a pause in a song, right before everything changes. Tyler noticed him first. "Hey, can I help you?" he asked, still half laughing from someone's joke. The man gave a polite but firm nod. "I'm looking for Elise Martin." The music didn't stop, but the energy shifted. Heads turned. A few people glanced around, confused, until Tyler gestured vaguely toward me. "That's her. Over there." Everyone looked. For the first time all night, I felt their eyes on me, not with mockery or dismissal, but curiosity. I stepped forward, hesitant. "Yes?" I said quietly. He extended a hand. "Miss Martin, I'm Jeremy Collins. I'm an attorney representing your father's estate. I have a matter I was instructed to deliver to you personally, today." I blinked. My father's estate? My voice barely came out. Now the music did pause. Someone lowered the volume, and a hush spread like a ripple across the lawn. My mother was already walking toward us, clutching a wine glass too tightly. "There must be a mistake," she said. "Everything with Robert's estate was handled months ago." Mr. Collins shook his head calmly. "There was a sealed clause. It was only to be opened on the day your son turned 18. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope, crisp and stamped. My name was handwritten across the front. I didn't reach for it. I was frozen. My heart beat louder than the music had minutes ago. "I've been instructed to read it aloud in the presence of the family," he continued. "Preferably today." Tyler scoffed. "What is this? A game?" "No, sir," Mr. Collins replied. "This is a legal matter." He turned to me again. "May I?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." Chairs were pulled. The laughter was gone. Some guests excused themselves awkwardly. The ones who stayed did so for the drama, like watching a train pull off the tracks in slow motion. I sat down in the center of the yard. For the first time all night, people waited for me. Not for my help. Not to laugh. But for my name. Mr. Collins unfolded the paper, cleared his throat, and began reading. Mr. Collins held the letter delicately, as if it were something sacred. His voice was steady, but I could feel the weight in every word. "To my children, Tyler and Elise," he began. "If you're hearing this, it means Tyler has turned 18, and my final request is being fulfilled. I've given this letter to my lawyer to be read on this exact day, because I believe the timing matters. And because some truths only hold meaning when spoken in the right moment." The silence in the backyard was complete. Even the wind seemed to pause. I know that in my final years, I wasn't always fair. Tyler, you were the golden child in the eyes of many, including your mother. Elise, you often stood in the shadows of this family. You cooked when no one asked. You took me to doctor appointments when no one else remembered. You didn't just love me, you showed me. My throat tightened. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My mother's expression was unreadable. In the last 6 months of my life, Elise was the one who sat beside me when I couldn't sleep. She never asked for anything. So I chose to give her something I hope brings her peace, freedom, and maybe even the respect she always deserved. Mr. Collins looked around, then continued reading. Effective immediately upon Tyler's 18th birthday, I transfer full ownership of our family home, located at 82 Meadowbrook Lane, to Elise Martin. Gasps echoed around the backyard. A glass shattered somewhere. I felt like I had been pulled out of my own body. Wait, what? Tyler stood up. He left her the house? My mom's voice was sharp and cold. That's not possible. That house was supposed to go to Tyler, he has a future. Mr. Collins didn't flinch. The deed was signed, notarized, and sealed. I have the legal documents here. He reached into his case and pulled out copies of the official paperwork. He held them up for all to see. Tyler's face turned red. This has to be a mistake. She didn't do anything. I finally spoke. My voice was quiet, but it felt like thunder leaving my chest. I was there when no one else was. He knew that. No one replied. Mr. Collins folded the papers and handed them to me. It's yours, Elise. Congratulations. I stood still, numb, as the reality sunk in. I wasn't invisible. Not to him. Not anymore. The lawyer nodded once, respectfully, then walked away as quietly as he had arrived. The rest of the party was frozen in a strange, silent tension. No one clapped. No one moved. And I just stood there holding the papers that proved, for the first time in my life, I owned something. Something big. Something mine. I walked back inside the house slowly, still gripping the documents like they might disappear if I let go. Behind me, I heard murmurs, shocked whispers, confused questions, even a few accusations. But no one dared come after me. Not yet. Upstairs in my room, I closed the door gently. I could still hear the party, though it no longer sounded like celebration. It sounded like tension. Like people realizing that something permanent had just shifted. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the folded papers. My name. My address. My signature space, already signed. It was real. A knock came at the door. Then another. It opened before I could answer. My mother walked in, wine glass in hand, her heels clicking across the hardwood like punctuation. This is ridiculous, she said sharply. He must have been confused. He was sick, Elise. I didn't say anything. She looked around the room as if it offended her. You don't even have a real job. What are you going to do with this house? I finally looked up. Live in it. She laughed, cold, short. You're being dramatic. You know this house belongs to the family. No, I said firmly. It belongs to me. Her eyes narrowed. Tyler is your brother. I know. He has plans. A future. What do you have? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood up, walked over to the dresser, and opened the small drawer where I kept my notebooks. I pulled one out and handed it to her. She flipped through the pages, lists of classes, a savings plan, design sketches. What is this? My future, I said quietly. It just never looked like yours. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, with a sigh that was more insult than breath, she handed the notebook back. You'll regret this. I watched her leave without looking back. That night, I didn't sleep much. I paced the room, thinking of everything, my father's voice, the nights I'd spent feeding him soup, the way he once squeezed my hand when he was too weak to speak. And then, I thought of the house. The hallway walls I painted 2 summers ago. The porch swing I fixed when no one else cared. The garden I watered every morning while everyone else slept. I didn't take this house. I earned it in quiet ways that no one saw. And now, it was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't dreaming of a better place to go. I was already in it. The next morning, the house was quieter than usual. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that filled every corner with tension. I could hear Tyler in the kitchen, pacing and slamming cabinet doors. Mom's voice was low and sharp, trying to calm him, or maybe trying to control the damage. I stayed upstairs, brushing my teeth slowly, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I didn't look different, but everything around me had changed. By noon, the front doorbell rang. I went down to answer it and found Aunt Denise standing there with a forced smile and a plate of banana bread. Just thought I'd check on you, sweetie, she said in that syrupy voice she always used when she wanted something. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat in the living room, looking around like it wasn't the same house she'd been in 100 times before. You know, your father was a complicated man, she said. He probably didn't realize what kind of tension this would cause. I didn't respond. She cleared her throat. Look, no one's trying to take anything from you. But maybe there's a way you can share the house. Let Tyler stay. Let things go back to how they were. I stared at her. Back to when I didn't exist at my own dinner table? She blinked. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. She shifted uncomfortably. Elise, family means compromise. Don't let a piece of paper come between you and your brother. I leaned forward. He's had everything handed to him his entire life. I had to fight for every scrap of respect, every moment of peace. I gave my father my time, my care, my patience. And now I finally have something that's mine. I'm not giving that away so everyone else can stay comfortable. There was a pause. A long one. Aunt Denise stood up slowly. Well, I guess we all know where we stand now. I nodded. We do. She left without touching the banana bread she brought. Later that day, Tyler knocked on my door. Not barged in. Knocked. I opened it halfway. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. Look. I didn't mean for things to get weird. They got weird when you laughed with everyone else, I said. He scratched his neck. Yeah. I guess I just didn't think it would actually happen. Well, it did. I don't want to fight, he muttered. But I don't think I can live here like this. I nodded. Then maybe you shouldn't. He didn't argue. Just walked away. That evening, I sat on the back porch alone. The lights from the party were still up, swaying slightly in the breeze. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel smug. I just felt still. Like for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission to exist. I belonged. And it was only the beginning. A few days passed. The birthday decorations were finally taken down, but the air inside the house still felt heavy, like everyone was walking on eggshells. Tyler stayed locked in his room most of the time. Mom avoided eye contact with me entirely. We were all still under the same roof, but in completely different worlds. I spent most of my time in the study, Dad's old room. It was where he used to sit late into the night, reading news articles and scribbling notes on yellow pads. I hadn't stepped foot in there since he passed. The door had always been shut. But now that the house was mine, I felt a pull I couldn't explain. I opened the door slowly. The scent of old paper and faint cologne hit me instantly, like time hadn't moved at all in here. His reading glasses were still resting on the desk, and a small photo of us, me and him at a baseball game when I was 12, sat by the lamp. I sat in his chair, ran my hand over the grain of the wood, and let the quiet wrap around me. That's when the memories started to flood in. Not the dramatic ones, but the soft, invisible ones, the nights I made soup for him when his appetite was gone, the mornings I drove him to physical therapy before my shift at the diner. The way he once whispered thank you when he thought I was asleep on the couch next to him. He never said much, but he saw me. Even when no one else did. I remembered one evening when he was especially weak. Mom and Tyler were out. I was sitting on the floor next to his chair, organizing his medications. He looked down at me and said, "You know, Elise, being dependable isn't flashy. But it's rare. People notice when it's gone." At the time, I thought he was just tired and rambling. But now it echoed in my bones. Later that night, I found a locked drawer in his desk. After a bit of searching, I found the key tucked inside one of his old books. Inside the drawer were documents, financials, insurance, property notes, but also letters. One addressed to me. In his handwriting, the first line read, "You were never invisible to me." I just didn't know how to show it loud enough for the world to hear. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I even got to the second paragraph. It wasn't just about the house. It was never just about the house. It was about finally being seen. That night, I sat on the porch again, this time with the letter folded in my lap. The stars above seemed brighter than usual, or maybe I just finally had space to notice them. This house, these walls, they weren't just made of wood and paint. They were full of proof that I mattered. Even in silence. Even in shadows. And now, I was ready to step into the light. The following morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. Raised voices. I stayed quiet at the top of the stairs, listening. Tyler and Mom were arguing. Again. "She won't give it up, Mom," Tyler snapped. "It's done. He gave it to her, and she's not budging." "She's confused," Mom replied quickly. "She doesn't understand what she's doing. This house, it's supposed to be our legacy, not some prize for her playing nurse." My stomach twisted. "She's not confused," Tyler said, sounding defeated. "She knows exactly what she's doing. And honestly, maybe Dad was right." That silenced Mom. I stepped down the stairs quietly and turned the corner. They both looked up. Their expressions shifted immediately: guilt, surprise, frustration. A mix of everything they didn't know how to say. "I'm going out," I said, grabbing my jacket. "Elise," Mom began. But I cut her off. "We don't need to keep having the same conversation. The answer's the same." She crossed her arms. "So you're just going to shut us out? Act like we don't exist?" "No," I said. "I'm just not going to keep apologizing for existing." And with that, I walked out the front door, heart pounding. I needed air. I needed distance. So I took the long way around the block, eventually ending up at the park where Dad and I used to walk when he still had strength in his legs. I sat on the same bench we used to share. The breeze was warm, carrying the scent of spring and freshly cut grass. For the first time in days, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I pulled the folded letter from my pocket and read it again. "Don't let them convince you that your quiet strength is weakness. The world needs more people like you, not fewer." The words stayed with me as I sat there, watching a father toss a baseball to his daughter across the lawn. She laughed every time she missed the catch, and he never got tired of throwing it again. That's what love looked like. Not just gifts and celebrations, but patience. Presence. Seeing someone, really seeing them. Back at the house, I packed a small overnight bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left the documents on the table and walked out. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something that felt more like me. I rented a tiny studio apartment on the edge of town with the money I had quietly saved over the last year. It wasn't much, just a single room with a creaky floor, a twin bed, and a kitchenette that smelled like old lemon soap, but it was mine. The landlord was an older woman named Ruth. She smiled kindly when I signed the lease and said, "Sometimes peace is more valuable than square footage." I couldn't agree more. For the first time in my life, I woke up without feeling like I had to tiptoe around my own existence. I made coffee the way I liked it. I lit a candle just because. I ate cereal out of the box while standing in my socks by the window. There was a joy in the simplicity of it all. Every morning, I walked to the local community college and sat in on evening classes for interior design. I hadn't officially enrolled yet, but I wanted to see if the dream still felt right. It did. I started journaling again, too. Not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote about my father. About what it meant to care for someone in silence. About how being unseen can shape you, and how being recognized, even once, can shift everything. I still visited the house once a week. I didn't move back in. Instead, I decided to rent it to a couple Dad had known from church, a retired teacher and her husband, a kind man who once helped rebuild our garage after a storm. They treated the home with care, and every time I stopped by to check in, I felt a soft kind of pride. Mom and Tyler didn't call. Not at first. But I heard through a cousin that Tyler had moved into a friend's guest room. He wasn't handling the shift well, but part of me hoped he'd grow from it. Maybe now he'd understand how it feels to be left out of a story you helped build. One Friday evening, I was walking back from class, sketchpad in hand, when I passed by a small boutique. In the window was a beautifully designed living room, simple, warm, inviting. And I stood there, staring at it, knowing that one day, I'd help create spaces like that for others. Spaces where people could breathe. Where people could feel seen. I smiled to myself. Not because I had it all figured out, but because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to choose me. I had already chosen myself. Fall rolled in quietly, painting the town in shades of amber and deep red. The air had that crisp bite to it in the mornings, the kind that made you breathe a little deeper, think a little slower. I had settled into a rhythm, a peaceful one I never thought I'd know. I officially enrolled in college. Not just night classes. Real enrollment. It felt surreal to sit in classrooms, surrounded by people chasing dreams just like me. Some were younger, some older, but all of them shared that flicker of hope behind their eyes. For the first time, I allowed myself to belong. The studio apartment had turned into something that looked like a life. I added thrift store furniture, hung my sketches along the walls, and bought plants I named without shame. Ruth, my landlord, dropped by now and then with leftovers. She said I reminded her of her daughter, quiet, stubborn, kind. With the income from renting the house, I didn't have to pick up shifts at the diner anymore. Instead, I volunteered at the community center on weekends, helping paint murals with local kids. Some of them reminded me of myself, soft-spoken, unsure, but full of quiet brilliance. One Saturday afternoon, as I was finishing a sunbeam pattern on the mural wall, I felt a presence behind me. Elise? I turned slowly. It was Tyler. He looked different. Tired, older somehow. His eyes weren't filled with defiance like they used to be. Just wait. Real wait. Hey, I said cautiously, standing and wiping my hands. I heard you were here, he said. Aunt Denise told me. I waited. I didn't know what he'd come to say. I've been a jerk, he admitted, staring at the floor. For a long time. I guess I didn't know how easy I had it until everything changed. I nodded. Sometimes it takes the ground to shake before people learn how to stand. He looked up at me. Mom's still mad. Says you ruined everything. I raised an eyebrow. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped letting myself be erased. He didn't argue. After a pause, he asked, "Can I see the house sometime? I don't want to move back. I miss it." That caught me off guard. But I nodded. Yeah. You can. We stood in silence for a while, surrounded by paint cans and the laughter of children echoing through the halls. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. Later that night, I walked home with a strange sense of calm. Life hadn't given me clarity in a flash. It came in layers, in echoes, in small quiet moments that built something stronger than I expected. I was no longer the girl standing in the corner of a birthday party, begging to be noticed. I was building something now. Something of value. Something that started with me. And I wasn't going back. Winter came in slow waves, frost on the windows in the mornings, scarves and boots appearing on every street corner, holiday lights blinking across porches like hopeful little stars. The world felt colder, but I felt warmer somehow. I had passed my first semester. My professors praised my creativity, my ability to notice the small things others missed. One of them pulled me aside after class and said, "You've got the kind of eye that doesn't just design spaces, it understands people." That stayed with me. Back at my studio, I taped up my favorite projects, room layouts, color palettes, hand-drawn mock-ups of cozy homes with big windows and quiet corners. I dreamed of one day designing spaces for people like me. People who needed more than furniture, they needed comfort. Safety. Dignity. The house, my father's house, stayed rented. The couple who lived there sent me updates every now and then, photos of the flower beds I once planted blooming again in the winter sun, the porch freshly painted. They treated the house with care. It made me feel like Dad's memory was being honored, not trapped. One Sunday morning, I got a call from Ruth, my landlord. She asked if I'd meet her for coffee. We sat at a diner downtown, the kind with cracked leather booths and mugs that never seemed to run out of coffee. She looked at me over the rim of her cup and smiled. "I'm selling the building," she said. "It's time." I blinked. "Oh. Okay." She reached into her bag and slid over a manila envelope. "I want you to have first option to buy the unit. You've been a good tenant. More than that, I see what you're doing with your life. And I think you deserve to stay rooted." I opened the envelope. Her offer was more than fair. My hands trembled a little. I don't know if I can afford this." She smiled. "You might be surprised. You've built something, Elise. Not everyone gets to say that." That night, I sat in bed with the envelope on my lap. I thought about how I used to feel trapped. Invisible. Like my life was always reacting to other people's choices. But now, I had choices of my own. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. The next morning, I called Ruth back. "I'll take it," I said. Spring came early that year. The trees bloomed with a kind of urgency, as if the world couldn't wait any longer to start again. And honestly, neither could I. A month after I bought the studio apartment, I signed my name on the final papers and held the keys in my hand, not as a tenant, but as an owner. It was small, humble, nothing flashy. But it was mine. Fully, truly mine. I hung a small wooden sign by the door that read, "Built with quiet strength." It wasn't just a quote. It was the story of my life. Classes picked up again. I joined a student design project that renovated small homes for low-income families. One day, as we finished a room for a single mom and her 2 kids, I stood in the corner watching them enter. The little girl ran to the window and gasped. "It looks like a castle," she whispered. I had never felt so proud. Back at the house, my father's house, the tenants invited me over for coffee on the porch. The place looked beautiful. Lived in. Cared for. There was laughter coming from inside, and for the first time, I felt the home was exactly what it was always meant to be, a place of peace, not pain. Tyler showed up unexpectedly a few weeks later. He didn't ask for anything. He just handed me a small package, a framed photo of Dad, me, and him from years ago. "I know I didn't say it before," he said. "But I see it now. You held the whole thing together, even when none of us saw it." I nodded, blinking fast. "Thank you." And that was enough. I still don't have all the answers. There are days I doubt myself. Days I feel the weight of everything I've carried. But now I have space to breathe, to create, to grow. I've learned that you don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the strongest. And that sometimes, the quietest ones leave the deepest mark. This wasn't the life anyone planned for me. It was the one I built for myself. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been the one overlooked, the one underestimated, remember this: your quiet strength is a force. Don't let anyone take it from you. Subscribe for more stories like this, and don't forget to leave a like if Elise's journey spoke to your heart. Your voice matters. Let it be heard.